Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back and welcome to 2026. Another year has absolutely flown by. Where'd it go? I have no idea. It's been about a month since I put out my last podcast. For those of you that are new, my name is Jason. I'm the host. This is the Chasing Balata podcast. And if you're an old returning person, welcome back. So, since it's been a month, I was kind of on the struggle bus about what I was going to talk about. I try to always talk about golf. Of course, here lately, there's been a lot going on with football. The college football playoffs were insane. Indiana Hoosiers are the national champions, and that is just absolutely awesome. Shout out to my buddy Josh Wood, a.k.a. Chappie. He knows what I mean. This is one of those scenarios, I think, where they were, without a doubt, the best team in college football. And what I mean when I say that is, the playoffs are great. Any team can make a run, as you saw with Miami being a 10 seed. But, Indiana, 16-0, national champs, they left no doubts that they are the best team in college football. It's not even a discussion. That head coach, Curt Cignetti, dude, that dude's a machine. I love that guy. He's so serious all the time, but the moment that game's over, then he smiles, right? Talked about having a beer after the game. That's a dude right there. He's probably fun at parties, but who knows, right? So we had that. We've had the NFL playoffs. Dude, I tell you what, I'm honestly, being a lifelong Eagles fan, I'm glad that they got eliminated, because I was so tired of watching that pathetic offense week in and week out. And consequently, they fired Kevin Patullo. Now, I feel like I should say that, I hate to scream for another man to lose his job, for anyone to lose their job. But, that is absolutely a profession where you have to perform. And if you don't perform, you have to go. You have to go. And unfortunately, I feel like it's one of those scenarios where you can't just remove somebody from a position and keep them in the organization, right? Because now there's that stigma, there's that awkwardness. What are you supposed to do if you were the offensive coordinator and now you're not? And you're still roaming the sidelines, you're in the practice facilities. How do you handle that? So I feel like the only move you can make is to just completely remove somebody from an organization. And you know what? That sucks. I get it. But he drove that offense into the ground. We led the league in 3 and outs. Now, if you go back to last year when we won the Super Bowl, we were unstoppable. We were explosive. And then we went to an offensive coordinator who would literally run the ball on 2nd and 14, 3rd and 12. I don't know what that mentality is. Maybe it's, they're not going to think we're going to run a draw here. Bullshit. Every team in the league knew what you were going to do all year long. So in my humble opinion, the Eagles 1,000% should have fired this dude mid-season. But, that's what happens when you go down with the ship, right? Sirianni, I don't know. But rumor has it that whoever Philadelphia brings in is going to have 1,000% control of the offense. Because, it's my understanding, Vic Fangio, our defensive coordinator, had full control of the defense. Period. Dot. Whereas in the offense, Patullo was the offensive coordinator with input from Sirianni. So it sounds like Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie are bringing in someone who's going to have total control. And honestly, I think the best move for them at this point would be bring in an offensive coordinator who wants to be an offensive coordinator, who isn't looking to take that next step to the head coaching position. Or someone who has already been a head coach, gone back to being a coordinator, and bring them in, right? Like, I think we would do well with Doug Peterson, who used to be our head coach. I think we would do well with Brian Daboll, the old coach from the Giants that got fired last year. He's a hell of an offensive coach. And, oh, by the way, he coached Jalen Hurts at Alabama. So I think those are the types of offensive coordinators we need to go after. I don't really think we need to find some up-and-comer who aspires to be a head coach. And we sure as shit don't need to promote from within. Because every time we promote from within, it's a fucking train wreck. So that's that. So we're on, we have the NFC and the AFC championship games this weekend. I think it's the Patriots are at Denver. And the Rams are at Seattle. So I'm predicting, I don't think the Rams can beat, I don't think they can beat Seattle. Not at home, too. So I'm pretty sure we're going to look at Seattle in the Super Bowl. And as far as the AFC goes, I mean, I'm pulling for Denver. Denver's a great story just because we finally have someone not named the Kansas City Chiefs as the number one seed in the AFC. But, of course, as I'm sure all of you know, Bo Nix has a broken bone in his right ankle, and he's out for the season. So that kind of sucks. But if we flash back to 2018, the Eagles, we won our first Super Bowl with a backup, Nick Foles, the legendary Nick Foles. And so I'm pulling for Denver. I hope they can put their backup in there and make a run. But we'll see because they play the Patriots. And it feels kind of weird seeing the Patriots in the playoffs without Belichick and Brady. But they are really, really good. So they might be able to go in there and do it. I'd say if the Patriots end up winning, it's going to be related to offensive struggles with Denver's backup. But we'll see. So anyways, I've just decided with this podcast that I feel like I was worried so much about how structured and perfect it had to be and everything had to go right. And that kind of made me tight about not wanting to make, mistakes. So I've just decided from here on out, screw it. We're just going to send it and we're going to see what happens. So we got a great show for you today. I'm going to talk about New Year's resolutions. Now, I'm not a big resolutions guy. I normally don't do them. I usually make fun of people who do, and I don't know why, but maybe it's my immaturity. But I decided to do some resolutions this year, and I'm going to tell you what they are, and we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to talk about, we're going to kind of recap my time in the Navy. Because for those of you who might be new, I'll give you a little background of who I am. I talked about it in my very, very first episode. But that was a long time ago. So we're going to kind of recap that. And then for golf, I thought we'd talk about the pre-shot routine. Very important stuff. Everyone should have a pre-shot routine. There's no right or wrong way to have a pre-shot routine, but I do feel like that there are certain things that you have to address, and, we'll get into that. So, without further ado, oh, by the way, you'll notice I'm wearing my glasses. So, this is where I'm at in my life now. I have to wear readers. My arms are no longer long enough to see my phone or to read things. I think they're 1.75s, just off the rack. But the difference is now I'm wearing them on camera because when I in the last year when I was recording my first episodes, I needed them to see the screen, but when I would look up at the camera would be kind of just slightly out of focus. And so it would hurt my eyes and I'd get a headache. Well, now I was realizing when I was setting up to start recording, I happened to glance up at the camera and I can see it perfectly. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we are going to just roll with it because it does make my life easier when I'm recording to wear these, because I wouldn't wear them in the previous episodes, and then I'd be trying to see my screen or trying to see something I got on paper, and I would have a really, really hard time, and I'd end up giving myself a headache anyways. So you know what? Screw it. I'm going into my 48th year. It is what it is. Every day is a blessing. As long as I wake up, that's a great start. If I have to wear glasses while I'm doing it, so be it. So let's get into these New Year's resolutions. This week's edition of Check This Shit Out is Jason's New Year's resolutions. I'm going to put myself out there. Why not, right? So I wanted them to be practical and realistic. Nothing crazy like, I'm gonna become a scratch golfer and qualify for this or qualify for that. That's not a realistic goal. Lowering my handicap is, and we're gonna get to that. So let's talk about it, right? Let's put myself out there. I said in first I have short-term and daily goals, and then I have long-term goals, right? So for my short-term goals, daily goals, I said in the very first episode, I talked about how I like to create. I always have things going on in my head, but I never really do anything about it. So one of my daily goals is I try to write for 20 minutes every day. This damn thing is vibrating or something. I got a boring coffee mug today, my Yeti, but it'll keep my coffee hot for like 10 hours. All right, so I try to write for 20 minutes every day. And I feel like that's plenty because I've realized already just since I started this that you can get a lot done in 20 minutes, right? Even if it's just going back at what you already wrote and chopping it up and editing it, whatever the case might be, because I've learned that when you put something on paper, so I'm up to 21 pages on a story that I'm writing about a retired Navy guy. It's a pretty wild story so far. I mean, I dig it, I guess, because I'm the author. I should like it, but it's kind of I'm going for like a twisting, kind of mind-bending reality scenario, and I've got a very good start on it, but it's starting to get a little tricky to kind of take the concept that I want and put it on paper. But like I said, 20 minutes a day, I feel like is a really, really good start. And, I'm up to 21 pages. I started it last year and got like 5 or 6 pages. Like I sat down one day in my kitchen with a simple phrase that my wife had mentioned, being retired, it was, now what? Now what? Right? And that's the very first 2 words of the story. Now what? And then I just went from there. I had no idea. If you don't, now I'm not a professional writer. I have a buddy who is, Jonathan Gensler. Go look up his work. He's an excellent, excellent storyteller. But one of the really, really cool things about writing is the way I write anyways. I don't have necessarily an agenda. Some things I write I do, like, this would probably be cool, and then I try to put it on paper. But with this, I put now what as the first sentence, and then just from scratch with no plan, I just spit out 6 or 7 pages. And then I kind of hit a wall and left it alone, which I talked about in the first episode. I'm terrible about that. And so I've gotten back into it, and I've got it up to 21 pages, and I really, really like the direction it's going. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you up to speed on that. Other short-term daily goals, be productive. No more procrastinating. I will tell you that I will admit I am a horrible procrastinator. It's kind of funny. I used to always say that I was more productive on sea duty when I was in the Navy, because with sea duty, if you're unfamiliar, Doesn't matter if you're aviation, surface, submarines. When you're on sea duty, you are gone a lot. And so your time at home is very restricted, and you know when it is. So you know you have these little pockets of time to get things done. When you're on shore duty or now retired, it's very easy to say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I apologize. Just to put this out there, I'm expecting a very, very important phone call. So if I abruptly pause and come back to you, it'll be for that. And we're also expecting a delivery that I might have to sign for. So just bear with me on that. But so if you see me looking at my phone, it's because it's making sounds and I don't know what they are. But now, I mean, I have gotten better. I wouldn't say I'm the world's worst procrastinator, but it's very easy to say, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Oh, we'll do it this weekend. Just do it now. So that's the goal. Be happier, right? Every day is a blessing, and growing older is a privilege. I really just don't understand people who complain about getting older. I don't. Maybe I'm in the minority, but, you know, it beats the alternative. It absolutely beats the alternative. Sure, your body starts to degrade a little bit. Maybe there's things that you like to do that you can't do anymore, but you're still here. And you only get one go around, so you might as well make the most of it. So I embrace getting older. Like I said, I'm coming into my 48th year. I'll be 48 in July. And, hey, man, send it. I feel great. I need to work on my weight a little bit, which I'll talk about in a second. But given the fact that I am a little bit overweight, it's hard to tell from this camera angle. This is almost like a catfish camera angle. But there is some things I need to work on, but I'm physically fit. Like, I'm in shape. My body is just carrying a little bit of extra weight that I need to get rid of. But, you know, I'm just as strong now, if not stronger, than I was in my 20s. I hit the ball just as far when it comes to golf as I did in my 20s. I might even hit it a little further. So, you know, embrace getting older, man. Because, again, it beats the alternative. You know, I used to have this guy that worked for me at my last command before I retired, this old country boy. And every day I would ask him how he's doing. And every day he'd say that he'd rather watch the grass grow than help it. And that's pretty accurate. So, one of my short-term goals was find employment that makes me happy and be the husband that my wife deserves. And as of yesterday, I found that. I was recently, you know, I haven't talked about it on camera, but I got my EMT certification last year, but I haven't really done anything with it. So yesterday I had the interview and they told me I was hired. That's the phone call I'm waiting on, is to get the ball rolling, get everything set up. But I will be working in the emergency room trauma department at Riverside Hospital in Newport News, which is a big trauma hospital. So I'm pretty damn excited about that. And it's a foot in the door kind of job. But my goal is to, well, one, I get to put my EMT skills to use on a daily basis. And two, it gives you the opportunity to pursue higher qualifications. So I can do that. And if I want to go to school to get my paramedic or nurse or whatever, it's going to provide me that opportunity. So I'm very, very excited about that, and more to follow there. Plus, you get to write your own schedule, which is wild to me, and I'm very excited about that because hopefully that will allow me to continue to do the podcast on a weekly basis. Short-term daily goal, study for my real estate license. Again, my wife and I decided, that sounds weird when I say it like that, but we decided that, yeah, I should probably maybe, it's time to delve into the real estate world. She's a realtor and a broker. She's very, very good at it. Joy Frazier, Prodigy Realty. Go look them up if you're looking for somebody to buy or sell a house. But I have started studying for that. It's an online school. It's a lot of reading for now, and then I have to take a test and all that jazz. So we're working on that. And then, here's one that's kind of putting me out there. And one of the reasons I kind of put on a little bit of poundage, because full transparency, right? I don't want to be somebody that gets on this camera and acts like somebody that I'm not. So I have no more drinking just to drink. Alcohol makes you feel like shit. Social functions are okay. So now I understand that totally makes me sound like an alcoholic. That's not the case. But I like beer. Beer is, to me, delicious. I love IPAs. They're probably my favorite. But, I guess over the span of 20-some years being in the Navy, and I'm not blaming the Navy. I'm just saying it's an easy atmosphere to find yourself with a beer in your hand. It wouldn't be any, like, if I wanted to have a beer with dinner, I would. Or maybe 2 beers. Or on a Sunday watching football, sitting at the house and having some beers while I watch football. But you know what? It just, it makes me feel like ass anymore. It really does. So I've just decided I'm not going to do it. And that's that. And I haven't had any beer yet. So, social functions. My friend group here, we're all bourbon guys. So, and I cannot drink a lot of bourbon. It just tears up my stomach. It makes me feel like it makes me nauseous if I drink too much, honestly. So I will sip bourbon, maybe have a couple fingers, because a couple fingers of bourbon, sipping it lasts a long time. So, a little social drinking here and there is okay, but no more drinking just to drink, right? Makes me feel like ass. So, what else do we have? All right, now we're into my long-term goals. So, like I said, I have put on a few pounds in the past 6 to 8 months. And so my goal was to lose 30 pounds by my 48th birthday, which is July 14th. And then I put ... Earlier is fine. So January 5th, the day I started, I was 214. That's not good. That's not good. I'm 5'9". I know you don't see me standing up, but I'm only 5'9". I'm not a tall dude. And 214 pounds on a 5'9" guy, not good. But, like I said, it's a delicate balance of fat and muscle. Unfortunately, the fat mostly shows. But, so anyways, I was 214 on January 5th. And then the next Monday, I was 209. And then I just weighed myself this morning, and I am 203. So I'm in that honeymoon phase where the weight is just plummeting, right? Falling off of me. I've actually been doing the carnivore. I tried the carnivore diet, which is basically where you don't eat any carbs, which I found is impossible. Unless I eat a ribeye every single meal or pork butt steak, you're inevitably going to eat a few carbs. I probably consume anywhere from 2 to 8 carbs a day just through carnivore style foods. Like, breakfast, I eat eggs and sausage and bacon. And for some reason, that's got a carb in it somewhere. I'm not sure where. I eat a lot of pork. I eat a lot of steak, hamburger, things like that. And my biggest concern at first was, how am I going to function without carbs? Will I have the energy that I need to work out, do this, do that, whatever? And the truth is, I feel great. I am never bloated. I would, in the past, when you eat carbs, not carbs, but when you eat too many carbs, you feel like, oh God, you feel like you're this big around. I have not felt bloated one time since I started this at the beginning of January. And I feel absolutely fantastic. My energy levels are up. I would say my sleep is better, but I don't sleep very well to begin with. So, but, you know, that's my free pitch for the carnivore diet. Do your own research. Do what works best for you. I am not certified in any way, shape, or form to be giving you nutritional advice or life advice. That's just me. So, but anyways, yeah, as of today, this morning, before I started recording, I was 203. So I'm down 11 pounds, and I know some of that's water, and your water weight fluctuates day to day. Tomorrow I could be 207 because I'm retaining water or some random reason. So we just go with it. You know, I try to weigh myself once a week and no more. I don't want to weigh myself every day because I feel like that could be discouraging. All right, long term. Finish my real estate license by March 31st. So that's still my goal, even with my new job. I'm still going to try and do that. We'll see how it works. Again, I'm waiting on the phone call to get all the details about scheduling and the hours and days that I'm going to work. And so we'll go from there. But that is the goal. All right, golf. Get my golf handicap down to between 2 and 2.5. Now, I'm currently 6.4. So I think it's doable. I do think it's doable. I don't know if I'm going to do a lot of tournaments this year. I think I'm just going to focus on my game. Now, I say that, and then I'll end up playing in tournaments. You're going to see me back on here in future podcasts talking about a tournament I just played in. But I think I'm on the right track. I've already started in the right direction of bringing it back down. You know, I creeped up to like a 6.7. Now I'm down to a 6.4. There's a few rounds in there that need to filter out that weren't very good rounds. You know, it is the winter time. Golf is scarce right now. You know, this is Virginia. You know, 2 weeks ago it was 75 degrees and sunny, and today it's 22. Right? You never know what you're going to get. So we play when we get the opportunity to play. I've played 218 rounds so far this year. And I shot 70. What did I shoot? 75, 77, something like that. And then last Saturday I shot 84. So, you know, the double bogeys got me. The 84 was solely because I had 3 double bogeys and 2 3 putts. And I've told you in the past, if I can keep double bogeys and 3 putts off my scorecard, I will usually shoot around 78, 79, 80. So there's that. And then finally, I want to grow my YouTube channel to over 10,000 subscribers. Now that's an end of the year goal. When I wrote that, I had just over 3,000 subscribers. In the past month, it has exploded up to 7,300 and I think it's 42, 7,342, something like that. So I appreciate every single one of you that have hit the subscribe button. Keep it coming. Please like and comment as well. That's how we grow. And I think I can get to 10,000 well before the end of the year. We might have to up that number. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, those are my New Year's resolutions. I'm curious to know what yours are. And are they realistic? Are they long-term, short-term? What do you got? I'm curious. I think we all need goals. Last year for me, every year is a great year. But I feel like last year for me was kind of a letdown from a personal growth standpoint, not from life and family and all that. I'm on top of the mountain when it comes to all that stuff. But personal growth for me professionally and goals that I might have had that I didn't put on paper, I just feel like it was kind of a letdown for me. So I feel like putting it on paper, putting it out into the universe for some accountability will help. So we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. So those are my New Year's resolutions. Let me know what yours are. So let's recap on my time in the Navy. For those of you that don't know professionally, what I did for almost 25 years was I was in the United States Navy. I am a retired aviation maintenance officer. I was an LDO. So an LDO, you don't have to have a college degree to be an LDO. So that's how I got in. I joined the Navy in May of 2000, and my rate that I chose was AME, Aviation Structural Mechanic Safety Equipment. A lot of people think the E stands for egress. That is incorrect. So, I went to boot camp at Great Lakes in Chicago. And you know what? Navy boot camp, I don't know if it's changed any, but even back then, as a 21, I turned 22 in boot camp actually, but as a 21, 22-year-old recruit in boot camp who had come straight from the college life of lots of partying and was not in very good shape, I honestly thought Navy boot camp was kind of a joke. So, I apologize to anybody out there that might take offense to that, but in the grand scheme of things, it really was. I was fully expecting a way more, I'm not going to say military type environment, but I was expecting it to be way more physical and demanding. And honestly, it just wasn't. It wasn't at all. The most physical it was is when your RDCs would beat you in the ship. And by beat, I mean PT. Punishment PT, because they could make it rain in there. They would work us so much and for so long that the heat from our bodies would accumulate, and it would literally form condensation on the ceilings and make it rain. So, but I was expecting, I guess it's, when you see the Marines and the Army and you have obstacle courses and this and that and weapons training, I was expecting all that. Man, we didn't get shit. Our weapons training was like these little rifles that had lasers on them that you shot at these fake ass targets. So that's just my take on that. I think all boot camps should involve physically demanding training. So again, unless it's changed, I'm not necessarily up to speed, but as an out of shape college dude, I didn't think it was hard at all. Now I did get in shape while I was there, obviously, because like I said, they beat us a lot or cycled it. I think they called it cycling. They cycled you. You would be drenched in your uniform. And I had to do a lot of push-ups because, if I remember the story correctly, my recruiter, I think it was my recruiter at the time, told my then girlfriend, who I had been dating in college when I joined the Navy, that she should send me cookies. So she did. She sent this huge box. This cardboard box shows up. And they holler for my name. They scream my name, and I go into their office, and they're like, "This doesn't sound like letters." And so they had me open it. And I don't even know how many effing cookies it was, but it was a lot. And so I'm standing there at attention, and they're like, "You can eat 3, but you have to eat them right now." So having done a job in the Navy where you're kind of in that RDC role, and I'll mention that in a second, but looking back on it, it's just such a ridiculous environment. Here's a kid or young man standing at attention, holding 2 cookies while eating one and just eating them, right? And then they proceeded to tell me that for every cookie they ate, I had to do 10 push-ups. So for the next, I don't even know how long, many times, multiple times a day, one of them would just stick their head out of the office and be like, Frazier, 4 cookies. And I'd have to get down and I'd have to do push-ups. And so by the end of boot camp, I was actually very proficient at push-ups. We actually did this competition at the very end where who could do push-ups the longest. And a guy and I can't remember his name now, but me and this one other guy were the last 2 going. And we went for 8 or 10 minutes. Now, I don't mean just constant, pushing them out. I'm talking like barely do one, hold yourself up, eke out another one, But I think we went for 8 or 10 minutes. It was a long time. And honestly, I can't remember if I lasted out or if he lasted out. But either way, yeah, I became very, very good at push-ups in boot camp. So, and then from there, I went on to A school in Pensacola, Florida. And again, A school was a joke. I had a great time, but it honestly wasn't hard. Very laid back atmosphere. You're in an environment where you're learning, but they also don't want you to fail. So, and that was actually the turning point of how I ended up in Hornets, being a career Hornet guy, because initially I did want F-18s. Like, that was my initial goal. Because what they did in our A school, there was only, in my rate, I wasn't in a very large rate. AME is not a huge number of people in it. So my A school class, there was 4 of us. And obviously I was from West Virginia. We had a guy from California. We had a guy from Jamaica. And we had a guy from, I think he was from the Virgin Islands. And so they let us fill out these wish lists for where we'd like to be stationed. And so I wanted F-18s in Virginia Beach, at NAS Oceana. The guy from California wanted to be at Lemoore, which is the other F-18 base here in America. The guy from the Jamaica wanted Jacksonville. He wanted to go P3s. And then the guy from the Virgin Islands wanted Puerto Rico, because at the time Roosevelt Roads was still open, the old air base there in Puerto Rico. So they take that, whatever, they run with it. I think our A school was like 4 weeks, maybe, something like that, whatever. Well, over that span of 4 weeks, I had learned more about P3s, and I had heard the rumors about how much money those people make on deployments with per diem, because they deploy to places like Iceland or South Korea or whatever. So then my wheels start turning, right? I'm like, maybe I want to go P3s. Maybe I want to make money. So, because at the time I was an airman, and in 2000, an airman paycheck, I think you made, I don't even know if I made $400 every 2 weeks. Like, it was bad. It wasn't good. It's definitely not what they make now. But I didn't have any bills. I didn't have anything. I didn't have a cell phone yet. I didn't have my first cell phone until I got to my first squadron. But, so, and the way it was going to work was at the end of the class, they would go in order of grade point average. Whoever had the highest grade point average got to pick orders first, and so on. So throughout that, it was between me and the guy that wanted P3s on who would get to pick orders first. We kept kind of bouncing back and forth. Well, the morning of the final exam, I was in front. I had the highest grade point average. And I had made up my mind because they came in before the test and they said, we've got the 4 sets of orders, and they put them up on the board, and they were exactly what everybody had requested. Virginia Beach, Lemoore, Jacksonville, Puerto Rico. But they didn't belong to anybody. They were up for grabs on order of final grades. So I decided right then and there, I'm like, if I end up with the highest GPA in the class, I'm poaching those P3 orders. You know, screw that dude. And as luck would have it, he did better than me on the final exam, and he jumped me by a point. So he ended up as the class honor or whatever they call it. And so he picked those P3 orders, so naturally I took F-18s at Oceana. And I think it worked out, obviously, in the long run. Maybe it was a blessing in disguise, I don't know. But so I ended up getting VFA 15, the Mighty Valiants at NAS Oceana, and I never looked back. I stayed Hornets the rest of my career, and I loved it. I loved everything about the Legacy Hornet, everything about it. They were a pain in the ass to work on sometimes, but, you know, I knew that jet inside and out, and I miss it. Like, I said this in the first episode, I would have stayed in the Navy until they forcibly removed me if they still had Legacy Hornet squadrons. But that's not the case. So after VFA 15, I did that for my first tour. I was an airman when I got there. I got there in November of 2000. We deployed April of 2001. And so I was on deployment during 9/11. Now, obviously, 9/11 was a horrific day. And being on deployment in the military, man, it like lit a fire under everybody, right? Like, we wanted to get even. We were on our way. We were heading south because like I said, we had left in April. And back then, before 9/11, when you went on deployment, it was like I'm not going to call it a pleasure cruise, but man, it was just one port visit after another. I think in the first 3 months of my first deployment, we hit like 10 ports all over Europe. I mean, into the Mediterranean, Greece, Spain, Italy, all the way up to England, Portugal. I mean, France. We went to all these places. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm like, dude, this is the greatest job ever. Why is everyone not in the Navy doing this? Because you get to go to all these places, see all these exotic things. And we were hitting ports so frequently that, like, we would pull into a port. We'd be there for 4 or 5 days. We'd get underway. We might be underway for like a week, maybe 10 days. And then we'd pull back into another port. So working 12 on, 12 off for 7 or 10 days in a row to get like a 4 or 5 day port in some beautiful country, totally worth it. Totally worth it. And again, I was like, I can't believe not everybody does this. They're idiots. Well, 9/11 changed all that. Because we did our first 3 months in the med, back and forth. We went, like I said, we went up to England. We went as far north. We didn't go to the Arctic Circle, but we were far enough north at one point doing a joint exercise to where it didn't get dark. And so that was cool because as an airman, I work nights. So you go up on the flight deck at 3 o'clock in the morning and it's bright daylight. So that was pretty neat. But anyways, after 3 months or so of that, we went through the Suez Canal, which is an experience in itself. It's truly one of the cooler things we do in the Navy. Because you go through the Suez Canal in a carrier, it's so narrow that when you're on the flight deck, you can't even see water. It's just land and land. And I think it's Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And, I remember Egypt had their Jeeps with their machine guns. And, they follow the ship, whatever, like we're going to do something. But going through the Suez is an experience. Plus, you get to say you did it. Not everybody gets to say they did it. And then you always go to the Persian Gulf, and you pull into the sandbox in Dubai. Bahrain, I don't think we went to Bahrain that time, but Bahrain's a big port visit. So you do your usual 2-3 months or whatever there. So then we were on our way south. We were cruising down past Africa. We were going to get shellbacked on September 12th. Like, this was our final schedule. We were on our way home. And our remaining deployment time, we were going to get shellbacked on September 12th. And that's where you cross the equator, and there's Navy traditions and some fun that's had. So we were going to get shellbacked on the 12th. We were going to pull into Cape Town, South Africa for 5 days. Then we were going to go to Rio in Brazil for 4 or 5 days. And then we were going home. I mean, we were all pumped about that because, well, it's Cape Town, South Africa, and Rio, Brazil. So, plus, I was excited about getting shellback because shellback is a thing that not every sailor gets to experience, especially East Coast sailors. Most deployments in the East Coast don't find their way over and down across the equator. West Coast deployments, it's almost a normal thing just because of the routes you have to take. So I was very excited about that. And then 9/11 happened. And I remember I was working, we were watching the TV and just watching the madness that was happening back home. And the captain of the ship at the time, Captain Winnefield, he actually ended up being a 4-star admiral, and I think he became the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff or something like that. But anyways, rumor has it he didn't even wait for orders. He just turned the ship around and went back and waited for orders once we were there. And so while that did cancel all those Gucci fancy plans we had, we knew what we were going to get to do, and we were very, very excited about that. So we went back and we hung out for a few weeks, and then roughly around like October, I want to say like October 5th or 6th or something like that, they gave us the green light, and we launched jets, and we blew Afghanistan to pieces, and it was very rewarding. It's a good, you're not the guy on the ground shooting a gun. You're not the pilot in the air dropping the bombs, but it's a very rewarding feeling. One, making sure you have jets ready to go. Two, seeing all that ordnance get loaded. And then when that jet comes back, it's empty because all the ordnance has been dropped. Very satisfying, very rewarding. People died. I'm sure, you know what? Fuck them, because look what they did to us. I think we lost over 3,000 innocent people that day. So I've never felt bad about bombing that country for what they did. That's enough of that. So yeah, after that, deployments changed. I did a deployment in 2003, and it was not the same. We cruised out of the Med, did all of our missions into the Middle East from the Med, which was very weird. And they were very long missions, like 8 or 9 hours. And I think we might have hit 1 or 2 ports. From there, I had the opportunity for shore duty. And so in true Navy fashion, being an aviation guy, they sent me to submarine school to be an instructor. That's right. Now, when I got up there, I found out, okay, you're not going to be a full-blown instructor. You're going to be what they call an MTI, a military training instructor. And so I showed up there as an E5. By the way, I said I was an airman when I got to my first squadron. I got there in November 2000. November 2001, I advanced to E4. And then a year later, in November of 2002, I advanced to E5. So, I went from airman to E5 fairly quickly. And actually, I remember thinking, oh man, this is nice. 2 years in the Navy, I'm ordering E5. Shit, I'm going to be a first class in no time. We'll get to that. So I go up to submarine school, and I'm a military training instructor. So you wear a red and white rope. Like the RDCs wear all red. Ours is red and white for whatever reason. That was a very rewarding job because it was I was at Basic Enlisted Submarine School, which at the time was designed to be an extension of boot camp. So those sailors would come there straight from Great Lakes, or if they were yeomen, cooks, or supply, they would come there after their A schools. And, right? Yeah, that's right. And so that was cool, right? Because I became very proficient at marching. You know, it was our responsibility to march them everywhere they went, to and from breakfast, lunch, assemblies, whatever, PT, room inspections, uniform inspections. So that tour really taught me how to get into that military. Because my first tour at VFA 15, dude, that was the party squadron. We were some partiers. I've been in a few great squadrons, but none will ever be like VFA 15. We partied everywhere we went. Normally, when you go on detachments, most times people don't want to go, right? They're like, oh, fuck, dude, we're going where? And they try to get out of it. You try to find reasons to get out of it. At VFA 15, you had to actually let people down and tell them that they couldn't go. Because everywhere we went, we had a great time. From our skippers all the way down to the airmen and everybody in between. It was a very unique command. I never saw anything like it. And I never saw anything like it again. But, so, my point being is I wouldn't say that I was the most military structured individual in my first command. So when I got up to sub school, it really taught me how to learn about discipline and how to put on my military face and how to be that sailor that held people accountable and all that stuff. So it was a good time and I loved it. It was my favorite tour. As much as I love VFA 15, my favorite tour was sub school because of the sailorization aspect. And I ended up not making first class while I was there. You know, you take the enlisted advancement exam for E4, 5, and 6, you take twice a year. And I took it, 6 times while I was at sub school and did not advance. And I had already taken it a few times before I came up there. So from sub school, I went on to VFA 34. I came back down to Virginia Beach. And that was in February of 2008. I came back to Virginia Beach, took the first class exam, didn't make it again. So now at this point, I've gone from, oh shit, this is easy, I'm already in E5, to, oh shit, I don't want to be in E5 anymore. Because at that point, I had taken the first class exam 8 times and had not made it. So I was starting to get a little frustrated. And I had decided I was getting out of the Navy. I wanted out. My goal when I came in the Navy, I had set a goal for myself that I wanted to make E6 in 8 years. And May of 2008, I'd been in 8 years, and it wasn't going to work. So, and actually, let me backtrack. I had decided the year before, when I was still in Connecticut at sub school, that I was getting out of the Navy. And I went through all the TAPs, all the stuff like that. And then my wife at the time ended up getting pregnant with our son. So we decided, hey, maybe I should stay in. I'll extend for a year, and that will give us the benefits, the health care, and all that stuff until he's born, and then we'll figure it out. So I extended for a year out of sub school, went back to sea duty, and then we deployed. I got there in February of '08, and we deployed, I want to say, in like March. So right away. And she was 5 months pregnant. And Ian ended up being born in July 1st. And I wasn't there, of course. That's the Navy for you. They weren't going to let me come home for the birth. So I missed that. But anyways, I got home in October. And again, I was still getting out of the Navy. I'd already taken the advancement exam for the 9th time. So I get home for deployment. I'm getting all my stuff together. I've literally got 1 foot out the door to leave the Navy, and my skipper comes down and tells me I made first class. So here I am with a smile on my face, like, oh, thanks, skipper. And on the inside, I'm like, dude, you got to be kidding me. I was almost out of here. And I was actually going to join the Air Force. I was leaving the Navy to join the Air Force because I wanted to get a change of scenery. Because in my rate in the Navy, if I wanted to work on Hornets, I could only be either here in Virginia Beach or in Lemoore, California, or at Sugi, Japan. But I didn't want to go to Japan, and I sure as shit didn't want to go to Lemoore. So we had talked about joining the Air Force, getting to do something different. Because at the time, the Air Force was taking prior enlisted from other services because they normally didn't do that. The catch is you had to pick from the rates that they offered you, or the jobs, MOSs, whatever they call it. And so when I went and talked to the Air Force recruiter, I had 2 choices. I could either be, I think it's an air combat controlman, where they drop you in country, or you go in country and you radio coordinates to aircraft. I think. Don't quote me on that. Or I could be a SEER instructor, which kind of threw me for a loop because I was like, how can I just join the Air Force and be a SEER instructor? And they're like, well, you'll come over, you'll go through our training, we'll put you through SEER, because their SEER apparently is a little bit different than the one the Navy does. Take that for what it's worth. And then we'll put you through our instructor school, and then you'll become a SEER instructor. And you would deploy in instructor capacities. Like we might send you to Afghanistan to give refresher training to XYZ. So I was like, well, actually, that does sound pretty cool. So I agreed to do that. But then when I found out I made first class, I went back to the Air Force recruiter, and I said, hey, they just promoted me to first class. And the recruiter is like, well, that's awesome, but you have to come over as your current pay grade. I was like, oh, shit. Because the way it works in the Navy, when you advance, you're what they call frocked. So while I might be wearing a first class crow and acting in a first class capacity, my pay grade is still E5 for a few more months until I officially get promoted. So I would have had to have come over to Air Force and stayed in E5. So since I'd made first class, I just said, you know what, man, screw it. I'm in it to win it. I'm going to stay Navy, and we're just going to ride this thing out and get my retirement. And so that's what I did, you know. VFA 34 was a very good command for me because I got there as an E5. I got there in February 2008. I was an E5. November of 2008, I made first class. And before I left, September of 2011, I made chief. So got there as an E5, left as a chief. So a very, very good command. They took very good care of me, and they set me up for success. And that whole chief's mess there was just phenomenal, as well as the officers, because a lot of officers there helped me along the way too. And then I went on to Strike Fighter Wing and at Oceana as the, I'll use air quotes when I say this, subject matter expert for egress and ALSS, like PR stuff, parachutes, seat pans, stuff like that. And while I was there, my master chiefs talked to me about maybe going LDO because, they were like, hey, you've only been in the Navy for 12 years. You're already a chief. Do you want to be a maintenance chief for the next possibly 18 years? And that was a valid point. So I thought about it, and honestly, one of the biggest reasons I did it was Ian's mom ended up getting breast cancer. And as that progressed and continued to really get worse, she ended up with bone cancer, which she was always going to have for the rest of her life, no matter what. So I kind of decided that I needed to stay active duty for as long as I could. And I could roll the dice and try to make senior chief and then master chief and go to 30 years. Or I could try and go LDO, commission, and then pretty much you almost automatically make 04 and I lieutenant commander, and I would get my 30 years without question. And so that's why that's one of the biggest reasons I did it, because I felt like, okay, I need to stay active duty for as long as I can to keep that active duty TRICARE. And so I put in a package, and it's funny too, because I kind of half-assed it. I was doing it, but I love being a chief, man. Being a chief is the greatest job in the military. Chief, senior chief, master chief, whatever. Being a chief. And I loved being in the chief's mess. I loved everything about it. But so when I put my package in, it was like, oh man, do I really not want to be a chief anymore? And I did all the thing. I hit all the wickets, and I'll be damned if they didn't select me. So October 1st, 2014, I commissioned. And we had a ceremony. They took my anchors off of me, put my ensign bars on, threw me out of the Chiefs Club. Literally, we made a video of it. A couple of my buddies picked me up and removed me from the Chiefs Club. And then from there, the rest is history. I became a maintenance officer, did all those typical jobs, transitioned over to Super Hornets because that's the direction the Navy was going. I ended up at VFA 103, went to 106, went back to 103, and then finished out my tour at FRC. And now here we are. Because when I got to FRC, I hit a wall. I hardcore hit a wall. Part of it was because, Joy and I had post-Navy plans, right? We were kind of okay with me staying in the Navy, but at the same time, we really wanted to move on and start our post-Navy life. So, because we got married in 2018, October of 2018, and I deployed April of 19, and I was gone for almost a year. So that was her introduction to the Navy, right? It was like, hey, so this is what I do for a living, boom, and then I'm gone. So we spent the first year of our marriage not even together. And I talked about that in the past, about just extension after extension, me constantly having to break her heart because I tell her, hey, we're coming home, and then I have to tell her, no, we're not. So that right there was one of the nails in the coffin. The Navy was very good to me, but I was getting real, real tired of being away from my family. That shit gets old, especially when you miss things. And us being newlyweds, you can't be newlyweds if you're not even on the same damn continent. So our first year of marriage, I have to thank Facebook for that, because that's how we talked basically every day, was through Facebook Messenger. Now I will say, being the awesome, awesome wife that she is, she hopped on a plane when we found out we were going to be in Bahrain for Thanksgiving. And she flew all the way to Bahrain just to see me for 5 days. That's not an easy plane ride. So I love you very much. Thank you for doing that for me. Well, this might be the phone call I was talking about. All right, well, that wasn't the phone call I was talking about. You'd be surprised to know that it was fucking spam. God, I hate those calls. But I have to answer the phone because what if it's the call I am waiting for? I don't know if it's going to show up as actually Riverside. So I got to roll the dice. So I apologize. But anyways, yeah, my wife flew all the way to Bahrain for me. I mean, if that's not love, I don't know what is. So she's my soulmate. I love her very, very much. And I can't imagine my life without her. And so there we are. That was, my last sea duty. And like I said, I went to FRC. And so the nail in the coffin was, one of the nails in the coffin was that deployment. From there, going to FRC. And you know what? I'm not here to bash anybody or any command. But I will say that as a career O-level sailor, and O-level meaning the people that fix the jets, going to a I-level command like FRC, I-level being, all right, quick rundown. So O-level, organizational, I-level, intermediate. O-level at the squadron level, say we have an engine that breaks. Okay, cool. We order a new engine. Now there's certain parts on an engine we can change, but in general, we'll just say the engine breaks. We order a new engine. We remove the old engine, we install the new engine at the O level. The old engine, the bad engine, goes to I level, and that's where they break it down and figure out what's wrong with it. They fix it, put it back in the supply system for somebody else to take. So I hope that makes sense. That's the down and dirty, easy way to say it. We change the whole part. They fix the part. Does that make sense? Okay. So I had never been I-level because when I was enlisted, AMEs don't have I-level shore duties. So when I got there, you're looking at a guy who's got a 20-year O-level sea duty mentality of just go, 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 go. And this place wasn't like that. And it was very, very hard to understand why people moved at the pace that they moved. And so I wasn't a fan of that. I was not a fan of the corporate kind of structure and hoops that you had to jump through to get things done. And it's just, I was not a fan of it. Now, when you go to commands like that, there are people there that are career I-level sailors, and they're great sailors. So they're very, very good at their jobs at the I-level because that's all they know. And the speed at which the I-level moves, that's normal to them. So when you get guys like me that show up, first-time I-level people who want things done and they want it done right now, it's just not going to work that way. And it's very frustrating. So that kind of wore me down a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. And then honestly, from there, it was just the hoops and the dog and pony shows that you're constantly doing to make the captains and the admirals happy. I mean, that's not me. I'm not that guy. I don't give a shit about pomp and circumstance and do all that. That's not for me. Now, the people that I worked for directly, my OIC, my AOICs, I love them so much. They were just the best leaders you could ask for. John Kraft, Shannon Coyce, guys like Brian Yee. I know I'm missing somebody and I apologize, but working for them was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I'm just talking about as a whole, it was very frustrating, and it was a very frustrating environment. So, that officially sealed the deal for me. And so in October of 2023, I talked to my wife, and I was like, hey, I want to punch out. And of course, she was okay with it. So I submitted my paperwork, and it got approved, and I retired October 1st, 2024, after 24 and a half years of service. So now, in the grand scheme of things, I'm very proud of what I did. I'm very proud of what I did. I'm very proud of what I accomplished. I have to say that I don't think I set a goal in the Navy that I didn't meet. If I could go back, I don't know if I'd change anything, because every command was unique. Every command had its own experiences, and it doesn't matter. You're never going to find the perfect command. You know, every command ebbs and flows. It's the greatest thing ever. Holy shit, this is terrible. And then it goes back up, and it usually happens while you're there. Sometimes you show up when you're on top, and then you hit rock bottom. Sometimes, you know, you're already at the bottom when you get there, and you're like, holy crap, why did I pick this place? And then it gets back up to the top, and you're like, I'm so glad I picked this place. But again, I was never Johnny Military. You know, I didn't do a retirement ceremony. I didn't even want to do a commissioning ceremony. A friend of mine I worked with, she made us, because she said it was more important for the family than for me. So I was like, all right. So we did a commissioning ceremony. But as far as retirement goes, man, I just wanted to dip out. And that's what I did. I started terminal leave July 12th of 24 and retired October 1st. And I've been living my best life ever since. And so that is my Navy career in a nutshell. All right, so I have rambled and rambled. Let's get to some golf real quick. I didn't realize how long I was talking about the Navy until I looked at the time. It was almost 40 minutes. So I hope you stick around for all of that, and I hope you stick around for this. So for golf today, I want to talk about the pre-shot routine. Now, I feel like it is one of the most important things you can do while playing golf, because for me, the pre-shot routine, it sets me up and it kind of triggers me for that next shot, right? There's so many factors that go into hitting a golf ball. I mean, the game's hard enough as it is, right? It's the only sport, I think, where the ball is stationary. Yet it's the hardest. It's the hardest to hit. So you need a pre-shot routine. Now, there's a couple ways to look at that. One, by routine, I don't necessarily mean physically. I'm talking about, mostly for me, it's mental. There are things that you absolutely have to take into account before you hit a golf shot. Okay? When you get up to your shot, the tee box is, we've talked about tee box strategy. The ball's teed up. Check the wind. Check where you want your ball to try and land. Go. Once you're out on the hole, now, you know, say your ball comes to rest just in the rough. Okay? Things you need to be looking at pre-shot. Number one, you got to look at your lie. What kind of lie do you have? Is your ball sitting up? Is it buried? Is it laying on top of some grass, laying towards the hole? Is it going against the grain in some grass? Things like that absolutely matter. If your ball is sitting up on top of some grass, or maybe it's got a little bit of grass in between the ball and where the club face is going to be, you could be looking at what they call fly or lie. And that means you're going to, whatever club you hit, it's going to go about 25% further. If your ball is in the rough going against the green, that's going to impact your yardage as well. The club's not going to send the ball as far as it normally would. So little things like that that you need to take into account. But you need to be looking at lie. You need to be checking the wind. Wind is a huge factor. A lot of people don't check the wind. I watch it all the time. All right? It matters. A strong wind can affect a putt. So it's certainly going to affect your golf shot. It was so windy. I played last Saturday, And on the 6th hole, I remember I was in a swell pitching up onto the top of a green, and it was so windy coming from my back and kind of it was coming from my back. It was downwind. The hole was downwind, but I was off to the left of the green, so I was pitching kind of across the wind. And when I hit that pitch, just a simple 20-yard pitch, I watched the wind cause it to draw. So the wind affects every shot, all the way down to putts. So you always have to take wind into account, right? So you got lie, you've got wind. Obviously, you need to know your yardage. You need to know potential hazards. You need to know where to miss. Like, where's the miss? And some people might say, oh, well, you're setting yourself up for failure if you're talking about where the trouble is or where you need to miss. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Right? Say you're playing a green. It's kind of, a lot of greens these days, they're kidney, we call kidney shaped. And you've got a pond all the way around the right side of the green, and there's a bunker there, and the pin's on the right side of the green. And you've got the size of Texas to the left. It's absolutely okay to say, you know what? I'm playing for the left edge of the green. If I pull it, I'm not in trouble because there's all kinds of room over there to bail out. Those are things that you absolutely need to talk about and think about, I should say, because you can't just disregard hazards and bailout spots. You need to know where those things are. Because if the pin is, say, front right on that hole and it's 130 yards, you don't want to hit a 130-yard club. I'm hitting at least one more club than that to make sure that if I do hit the ball at the flag, it's got plenty of distance to get on the green or gives me plenty of room to bail out. But I don't want to put myself in a position to come up short and end up in the water. And we've talked about that. So you got to know where the hazards are. You got to know where the misses are. And that's basically all I take into account. I do lie, wind, what's my yardage, and where's the trouble, and where do I want to miss. With yardages, I mostly focus on what's my number to the stick and what's my number to the middle of the green. Now, sometimes that changes. If the green is a wide open green, meaning there's no real trouble, no real trouble that I need to worry about, then I want to know what my yardage is to the middle of the green, and I want to know what my yardage is to the stick, whether it be front, middle, or back. Because 9 times out of 10, if the pin's in the front or the back, I'm probably firing at that middle of the green yardage, unless I feel like it's a pin that I can really go at. If it's a pin I think I can go at, and I've got the right club in my hand, like say it's a back pin, and I want to try and fire all the way back to it because I'm using a wedge and I know the ball's going to stop, then that's different. But in general, I'm looking at middle of the green yardage. Now, that changes for me when I'm playing a hole that has trouble that comes into play, meaning like a lot of holes at my home course, you have to make sure you clear bunkers to get the ball to the green. So then, if I'm playing a hole where it might have a bunker right in the front, or maybe just front left or front right, I want to know what my yardage is to the flag, and I want to know what my carry is to clear the bunker. So, let's say the flag is 135 yards, and to carry the bunker is 125. All I'm worried about now is what's going to get over that bunker. Even if I hit a mediocre shot, what is getting over that bunker? So 135 yards, I'm hitting a pitching wedge. But if I don't hit the pitching wedge very good, I could come up short in that bunker, especially if wind is a factor. So more than likely, I'm going to take a 9-iron and swing a nice smooth 9-iron and make sure I clear that bunker. And if I don't catch it very clean, it's probably going to end up in the near proximity of the flag as far as distance goes. So that's how I do it. So wide open greens, I look at stick yardage, flag, stick yardage, middle of the green. If I have to negotiate bunkers or whatever, I'm looking at stick yardage and what's the carry? What's the carry of that hazard trouble? Now, this all happens in a matter of seconds, right? The more you play, the easier it is. You pick up on it. You walk up, you see your ball, you know what you're dealing with, check your wind, check your yardage, go. Shouldn't really take that much time. Now that's part of the pre-shot routine. The other part is would be the physical part, like how many practice swings do you take? Where do you take your practice swings? Do you take your practice swings behind the ball? Imagine your shot. You should always imagine your shot that you want to hit. You should always be like, okay, see your ball in the air, take your practice swings, address the ball, go. Now, having said that, how you want to do that, how you want to go about that, that's up to you. I don't take practice swings behind the ball. What I like to do is, and I don't always do this, I'm guilty of it, but especially in tournaments I do, there is a book called Vision 54, and it's written by these two ladies from Sweden, Lynn Marriott and Pia Nelson. And it's called Vision 54. And it's called 54 because the whole idea behind it is you can birdie every hole. And if you birdied every hole on a par 72 golf course, that's 54. So it's an amazing book. And what makes it such a great book is it doesn't try to teach you about the golf swing. It doesn't try to tinker with anything. It's all about your mentality and how you approach it. Personally, I think the best golf instruction books are the ones that don't even address the golf swing at all. I mean, yeah, you have those books by Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods and some other golfers about how I play golf. This is how I do it. And those are very, very informative books. But that's also Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods and other legendary golfers who are the greatest to ever do it. You know, and one golf swing doesn't work for everybody else. But anything from Dr. Bob Rotella, who is a mental coach, and anything from Lynn Marriott and Pia Nelson, I think those are the best instructional books because they address the mental aspect of the game. And I've told you, 80 to 90% of golf is played up here. But they have what's called a think box and a play box. And the think box, you like, right? You're on the range. You can. I started doing it on the range just to get in the habit of doing it. And again, I'll admit I'm guilty that if I'm out and about just screwing around in a casual round, I don't necessarily do it. But I always try and do it when I'm playing in tournaments. And honestly, I should do it every time I play. But so, you know, you draw like this imaginary line, right? So in the think box is where you're making all your decisions. You're thinking about the lie, the wind, the yardage. What club am I going to hit? Would it benefit me to try and fade the ball? Would it benefit me to try and draw the ball? Do I want to aim way left because there's water right? Whatever the case might be. You pull the club you're going to hit. In that think box is when you need to become 100% committed to the golf shot you're going to hit. Because after the think box, when you cross that line to your golf ball, you're now in the, as they call it, the play box. In the play box, you're not thinking about anything. You're not making any types of decisions. You're simply executing the shot that you decided you were going to hit in the think box. And if the slightest little doubt creeps into your head before you swing that golf club, you should back off the ball and get back in the think box. Because you should never second guess yourself. And you know what? I think we're all very guilty of that. How many times have you addressed the ball? Like, this happens to me more often than I'd like to admit. But I will step up to hit a ball and I'll address it. You know, and I'll set up, I'll get my club behind the ball. I'll take one last look at the target. I'll look back down at the ball, and in my head, I will say, man, I feel like I'm standing too close to this golf ball. And then what do? I swing anyways. And you know what? More often than not, I hit a terrible golf shot. And then you're stuck saying, you know, I told myself I was standing too close to the golf ball, and I didn't do anything about it. So this, the Think Box, Play Box, teaches you and helps discipline you to keep all the decision making behind the golf ball. And then you step into the play box and you execute. And one thing that I prefer, I don't spend a lot of time over the golf ball. Once I've decided this is the shot I'm hitting, if I take a practice swing, I take it beside the golf ball. So I like to feel, I'm very much a feel golfer. And so I like to feel the swing I'm about to execute and feel that rhythm. And then I step up and it's not even 10 seconds. The ball's gone. I'm hitting. I see people get over the golf ball and they just stand there and they stand there and they stand there. And I can guarantee you, the longer they stand there, the more they're tensing up. Probably the tighter they're gripping that golf club. They're thinking. Don't do this. Don't go right. There's water right. Don't go right. And then you do that anti-right swing and snap hook one out of bounds or whatever. I get over the ball. I look at the target maybe once and I go. Because, you know, at my skill level, me standing over the ball, I feel like it's only going to make it worse. Because now, I'm telling you, doubt starts to creep in, and it just goes downhill from there. So that's my take on that. Think box, play box. And again, if you have doubts as you're about to hit the ball, back off. Back off. Get back into think box. Get your nerves settled down. Figure out how do I say this? Figure out where you felt like you were going wrong and then reattack. But now don't be all day. Obviously, some pre-shot routines are painful to watch. You know, not to sound like a dick, but if you're a very high handicap golfer and you're taking 5, 6, 7 practice swings only to, you know, hit the ball 10 yards. Like, what are we doing? Look, we all have bad shots. I'm not saying that. But this isn't the tour. 3 practice swings at most, I feel like, is plenty. But again, the pre-shot routine should be your own. It should be whatever makes you comfortable. But there are certain things that every single one of us should do. And that's the mental part. Lie, wind, yardages, whatever club you decide you need to hit. The physical part, where you take your practice swing, how many practice swings you take, if you take practice swings at all, that's up to you. Whatever makes you comfortable. Again, I don't take practice swings behind the ball. I do all my decision making behind the ball. Then I step up, take 1 or 2 swings, and then I go. I try to keep it quick, simple, and I try to keep it the same for every shot. The only thing that I will do differently is with my pitching and chipping. I am 1,000% a field player when it comes to pitching and chipping. And that doesn't sound like it makes very much sense because everybody is. But if I'm standing behind the ball from the fairway at 140 yards, I already know how far I want to hit the ball. And I try to always put myself in a position where I take full swings. So I take that decision making out of the process. When I'm pitching and chipping, it varies because you might be 10 yards, you might be 20 yards, but you're using the same club. So while I stand behind the ball and say, okay, I want the ball to fly this far, I want to land it, I find a spot on the green, that's where I want the ball to land. Hold on. All right. Sorry about that. Don't worry. I'll figure out a way to edit that out. So it'll be one smooth, continuous motion. But what was I saying? Oh, so, I pick out a spot on the green. Like, okay, I want the ball to land there. That's when I get up beside the ball. And I will take a handful of pitching or chipping motions. That's how I develop the feel for, okay, if I want the ball to go this far, I need to swing roughly, this hard. And so I will take more than a handful of practice swings there because that's me getting a feel for the distance I need. I'm not in the fairway where I'm taking a full swing. I don't need to take 5 or 6 practice swings to do that. But when I'm up pitching and chipping, yeah, you will see me doing that. I'm quick about it. I'm not a slow golfer. But that process for me does change a little bit with pitching and chipping. And then as far as putting goes, I think putting is probably where you need to have the most solid routine because it's such a delicate stroke. Now me, I don't take practice strokes at all with my putter. At all. I've tinkered with pre-shot routines with putting for a long time, and I've found what works best for me is I will squat down. Most everybody squats down and reads a break. I will do that for a few seconds, but really I've found that the best way for me to read putts that works for me is I stand up behind the ball and I try and back up at least 10 or 12 feet behind the ball. And I look at the green like that. And for me, I've realized that I see the putt, I visualize the ball rolling a lot better and the break when I'm standing up behind the putt. Because if you remember in our last episode, I talked about percentages for making putts. So, anything outside of 10 feet, you're going to make a third of the time or less. That's just stats. So I'm not overly concerned about not maybe seeing a very subtle break if it's not, because I'm standing up instead of squatting down. My goal from outside of 10 feet, yeah, I'm trying to make it. But my real goal is the 3-foot circle. And preferably getting the ball to the hole. But either way, the 3-foot circle is always my goal. And so for me, I stand up behind the ball, and I visualize it that way. And I found that my putting has actually improved. And again, I don't take a practice stroke. I visualize the line that I want, and then I get up beside the ball, and as I'm addressing the ball, putting my putter behind it, I'm looking at the hole, and that's when I get a feel for my distance, 12 feet slightly downhill. And then from there, I just execute. And that works for me. Other people get beside the ball and they take their practice strokes beside the ball. They take 2 or 3 quick little strokes and they go. Some people take their putting strokes behind the ball while they're looking at the hole. And then they get up and they go. So whatever works for you. But I think at the end of the day, the best thing for you to do is just find what works for you and trust it. And trusting it is the most important part. Because, like I played golf last Saturday with a buddy, and he was fading the ball on the range. Fade. He's a good golfer. And we get out on the course, and for the first 5 or 6 holes, the fade was not there. He was pulling it. It was either going dead straight to the left, not dead left, but dead straight left, no fade, or he was drawing it, pulling it. But he trusted the process. And he that's the worst thing you can do is if you're not fading the ball mid-round, you try and change your swing to try and fix that problem. Okay, I'm not fading it, so maybe I should do this. That's the worst thing you can do. You have to trust your golf swing, and you have to golf your swing. I always say that. Golf your swing. It's your swing. But I watched him struggle the first 5 or 6 holes. He didn't change anything. He trusted it. He knew what he was doing wrong, and he corrected it, and he played the last, 12 holes, lights out. Absolutely lights out. That's what you got to do. You got to trust it, and you got to go with it. So find the pre-shot routine that works for you. Trust the process, and golf your swing. Well, I have definitely rambled on for long enough this week. Like I said, it'd been a month. I had a lot to say. And honestly, there was so much stuff that I actually wanted to talk about, but I just figured I had to narrow it down to something to get an episode out. So I think we're going to officially call this Season 2, Episode 1. Since it's the new year, we're just going to start fresh. So now we got Season 1, 7 episodes. We're starting Season 2. And again, thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to the YouTube channel. That's been my goal since day one, is to just grow that and spread the word about golf and sports in general. So thank you so much for that. Again, as always, like, follow, subscribe, comment, wherever you get your podcasts from, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever. But continue to listen, continue to like. I appreciate it very much. I read all the comments. Not that there's a lot, but I do read them. And until next time, send it.